happens to all sorts of people in all sorts of situations. And I think the statistics are really compelling. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 3 women experience sexual assault globally. In the US, 1 in 5 women report being sexually assaulted. 1 in 20 men and women experience sexual violence of some kind during their lifetime. So, yeah, it's men and women, right? It's not just women. On college campuses, 19% of women, that is nearly 1 in 5, have experienced attempted or completed rapes since entering college, and some studies put it as high as 1 in 4. We know, too, that at least 50% of sexual assaults are never reported, so the actual incidence is probably a whole lot higher than those numbers would indicate. And the US ranks 13th in the world for rape. Sexual assault is not rare, it's not unusual, it's not the isolated act of some scary individual acting alone. It's a widespread societal phenomenon. Women are raped by people they know, children are raped by family members, boys are raped by priests and coaches, and so on. Sexual assault is not just the act of some deranged psychopath. The perpetrators are often people that we know, people that we trust. So sexual assault runs through the fabric of our lives and through our society. So if we recognize that, I think we also have to try to think about what it is about our society that allows sexual assault to keep happening so much and so frequently and so ubiquitously. We seem to live in a culture that encourages sexual violence. So it's important, I think, to think about the characteristics of such a culture in order to challenge and change them. The frequency and scale of sexual assault is part of what we might call a rape culture. A society in which, first, victims of sexual assault are said to be asking for it by dressing a certain way, or by putting themselves in so-called risky situations, or by drinking too much, or by trusting the wrong people. But no one asks for sexual assault. Sexual assault is never the victim's responsibility or fault. Still, our rape culture keeps blaming victims for the crimes that are perpetrated against them. A rape culture is one in which sexual violence is glamorized and glorified, as in slasher films, where sexualized situations are always linked with violence, or in commercials, like a recent one for NARS Cosmetics. I don't know if you guys have seen it, where an apparently beaten and unconscious woman is posed nude, so that sexual violence is presented as appealing and a consumer attraction. If you think about slasher movies in particular, if you've noticed, it's always when the women or girls are in some sort of state of undress, when they're at sort of the most sexually provocative moment, which is designed to arouse your average heterosexual male. That's when the killer strikes. So violence and sex are always coupled in those sorts of films, and this is very impressionable, especially for teenage boys who are sort of the main audiences for those movies. And so they send out a very powerful message that sex and violence are linked and should be linked. Rape culture is a culture where women's bodies are relentlessly objectified, positioned as objects of the gaze and sexually passive, and where men tend to be constituted as sexual aggressors. It's a culture where sexuality keeps being defined in terms of oppositions, where female sexuality is defined as submissive or kittenish, and male sexuality is always defined as aggressive and unemotional. It's a culture that rarely represents a sexual relationship then as ethical or equitable or mutual. It's always portrayed in terms of unequal power relationships, and when it's portrayed that way, there's always a winner and a loser. A rape culture is where we make a list of 1 million prevention tips for victims, but we fail to teach perpetrators not to rape. And it's a culture where rape is accepted as an everyday occurrence, and little is done to challenge or change that fact. It's the new normal, but it can't be normalized. We can't allow a rape culture to keep perpetuating rape. We need to speak out, we need to heal, we need to give voice to our rage, as Kelly said earlier, our grief, our trauma. But we also need to see the big picture, I think, and to work collectively against the societal and cultural institutions that excuse, tolerate, and even celebrate rape. So it's not an occasion for celebration, it's an occasion for action.